She was fired for bringing her sick son to work until her new boss walked in and said, "I was that kid." "Brenda, why is your son here?" Letitia's sharp voice echoed across the meeting room. "This is a workplace, not a daycare." Everyone turned to look. Brenda stood quietly at the end of the table, holding her little boy, Mateo, close to her chest. His face was red from fever. He breathed in weak, wheezy gasps, hiding his face in his mother's shirt. Brenda's blonde hair was damp with sweat and rain, her eyes tired and full of worry. "I didn't have anyone else to watch him. He's sick. I couldn't miss work again." Letitia shook her head. "Company rules are clear. No kids allowed at work. This is not acceptable." Silence. Brenda looked around, hoping someone, anyone, would speak up. But her coworkers looked away. No one said a word. "I just needed to finish my shift," Brenda whispered. "You're fired. Effective immediately," Letitia said coldly. Brenda's heart stopped. Her legs felt like stone. No one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the buzz of the lights above. Letitia turned and walked away, leaving Brenda standing there with her son. Brenda held Mateo tighter. His small body burned with fever. Slowly, with tears stinging her eyes, she turned and walked out of the office. The hallway was empty. She pushed open the glass doors and stepped into cold rain. The sky was gray, the streets wet and shiny. Brenda took off her jacket and wrapped it around Mateo, even though her blouse was already soaked through. "I'm cold, Mama," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart." She kissed his forehead. They walked down the steps. People passed by with umbrellas, but no one looked. No one stopped. She felt invisible. Her job was gone. Her child was sick. Her phone battery was dead. She had no car, no one to call. But she kept walking. At the corner, Mateo's breathing got worse. Brenda held him close and pressed her cheek to his. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "Mama's not giving up." The rain got heavier. She tucked Mateo's head under her chin and kept going. He coughed and held on to her necklace. They passed a cozy little cafe, warm light glowing from the windows. People were laughing, sipping coffee. Safe, dry, happy. Brenda paused, then turned away. She couldn't let anyone see her like this. She walked on, her shoes splashing through puddles. Under a store awning, she stopped to rest. Mateo was asleep, his breathing soft. She brushed his wet curls from his forehead. "You're going to be okay," she whispered again. The rain kept falling. The wind didn't stop. But Brenda didn't cry. She stood tall. She had nothing, nothing but her son. And for her, that was everything. She carried a stack of resumes, edges torn, paper wrinkled from the rain, and hope. Day after day, she went from shop to shop, diners, gas stations, small stores, anywhere she might find work. But every time they saw "terminated" on her record, their faces changed. "I'm sorry, we're looking for someone more stable." No one called back. By the 4th week, she sold her engagement ring, the one from Mateo's father, who left long ago. The money bought food and one small bottle of asthma medicine, the cheapest she could find. But it wasn't enough. One freezing night in a gas station bathroom, Mateo's breathing got worse. His chest rose and fell too fast. Brenda held the inhaler with shaking hands. "Breathe, baby. Please, just breathe." She counted with him, slow and steady, tears falling down her face. He nodded. He trusted her. They had no home, no savings, just love, and it wasn't enough. The gas station worker, an older woman named Carol with soft eyes and a tired face, saw them and took pity. She let them stay in the employee restroom at night. It wasn't much, just a bench, a blanket from Carol's car, and a flickering light, but it was warm, safe. Brenda worked there at night, cleaning toilets, refilling soap, wiping doors and sinks. Her hands were cracked, her knees sore. The smell of bleach stung her nose, but she didn't stop. Every dollar she made, she counted 3 times before spending. One night after her shift, she found Mateo sleeping on the bench, finally breathing easy. She knelt beside him, brushing his hair back, and kissed his forehead. "You were so strong today, baby. Mama's proud of you." He stirred a little, eyes still closed. "I love you, Mama," he mumbled, and that's all she needed to keep going. Her throat felt tight. She looked at the clock. Almost 3 a.m. In less than an hour, her shift would start again. Her legs were numb, and her arms shook from being so tired. Brenda gently pulled the blanket around Mateo and tucked his inhaler close to his chest. Then she whispered, "Sleep well, my little lion. I'll be right back." She stood up quietly and closed the door behind her. The hallway was quiet. The buzzing lights above flickered faintly. Brenda picked up the mop and bucket. Her body ached all over, and her eyes stung, but her heart stayed strong. She would clean every building in the city if it meant Mateo could breathe freely again, if it meant he could laugh without coughing. "I'll come back," she whispered to herself. "I always come back." Every morning, Brenda had gotten used to the same knock, 3 gentle taps, and a warm voice speaking Spanish. "Mija, I brought you something." It was Mrs. Maria, the sweet older neighbor from down the hall. She had raised 4 children on her own and been through many hard times. Brenda had once helped her carry groceries, and ever since then, Maria had looked after her like family. That morning, Maria handed Brenda a folded flyer. Big letters at the top said, "Solis Rivera, now hiring janitorial staff. No diploma needed. They clean office buildings," she explained. "It's not fancy, but it's steady. And they're run by our people. Maybe they'll understand." Brenda looked over at Mateo, who was sitting nearby drawing superheroes on cardboard. She clutched the flyer tightly. "Thank you. I'm going now." The next day, Brenda and Mateo took 2 long bus rides across town. Mateo held her hand tightly, already tired before they even arrived. The Solis Rivera building was simple. Gray bricks, a small lobby, and a lemony clean smell. Brenda signed in at the front desk and got a short application. She sat in a plastic chair, balancing the form on her knee. Her hands trembled as she filled it out. Name, past jobs, then the hard question. "Have you ever been fired?" Her pen hovered. Then she checked yes. Mateo coughed next to her, deep and rough. A receptionist looked over, startled. Brenda gently rubbed his back. "Shh, it's okay, baby." He leaned against her shoulder. The inhaler was nearly empty again. Just then, a man walked through the lobby. He looked busy, keys in one hand, phone in the other. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, and there were gray streaks in his hair. He looked like he hadn't slept much. When he saw Mateo, he slowed down. His dark eyes softened, like he remembered something. He looked at Brenda. Their eyes met. No pity, no judgment, just a flash of understanding. He gave her a small, polite nod and walked on. Brenda finished the form, her hands shaking. She handed it back. She didn't expect to hear anything, but the very next afternoon, her phone buzzed. "Ms. Lopez, this is Elena from Solis Rivera. We'd like to offer you a part-time cleaning job on the afternoon shift. You can start tomorrow." Brenda's jaw dropped. "Really?" "Yes, and we understand you might need to bring your child. We have a break room. As long as he stays safe, it's okay." Brenda covered her mouth. Thank you so much." She hung up and hugged Mateo tight. "We got the job, baby. Mama's working again." The next day, Brenda walked into the office with Mateo by her side. Everyone was kind. Many were immigrants like her. They spoke English and Spanish, sharing stories and helping each other. Elena, the supervisor, showed her the cleaning supplies and pointed out the employee break room, a small space with a couch, an old TV, and a mini fridge. Mateo sat quietly on the couch, drawing in his notebook, while Brenda got to work. She scrubbed floors, emptied bins, and cleaned glass doors. The work was hard, but it was honest, and she was thankful for every minute. One day, as she worked, she looked through the hallway window. The man from the lobby, Bruce Rivera, walked by again. He paused and looked at her, nodding once with quiet respect. Brenda nodded back. She still didn't know who he was, but something had changed. A door had opened, and this time she stepped through it. Every afternoon, she slipped on her gloves and started cleaning. She polished bathroom sinks until they sparkled, mopped dirty tiles, and wiped smudged glass until her reflection came through clear. Even when her back ached or her hands burned, she didn't stop, because just down the hall, in a small room with peeling walls and a threadbare couch, her son was safe. Mateo stayed there, curled up with his crayons, drawing crooked hearts and stick figure heroes. Brenda checked on him every hour. She'd run in, crouch beside him, and wipe the sweat from his forehead. "You okay, baby?" she'd whisper. Mateo would nod, too tired to speak, but always searching her eyes for comfort. She gave it with a kiss, a smile, a gentle touch. They found a rhythm. Brenda cleaned, Mateo rested, and time moved forward, slow but steady, like a promise. Then, one Wednesday afternoon, everything changed. Brenda walked into the break room to check on him, as always, but froze in the doorway. Mateo was sitting up straight, eyes wide in surprise. On the table in front of him was a little treasure pile, a new box of colored pencils, 2 thick comic books, and a soft stuffed lion with a crooked smile. He looked at her and gasped, "Mama, where did this come from?" Brenda stepped closer, her heart pounding. I don't know," she whispered. She picked up the box of colored pencils, turning it over like maybe it had a note or name, but there was nothing. Then she opened one of the comic books. It was brand new. She could still smell the fresh paper. Her hands shook just a little as she set it back down. Mateo's eyes lit up like stars. He looked up and asked, "Can I keep them?" Brenda nodded slowly, still stunned. "Yes, baby. Of course." Later during her break, Brenda asked the other workers, "Did anyone leave some gifts for my son in the break room?" Everyone shook their heads. No one knew. Elena, her kind supervisor, smiled. Maybe someone from the office? I'm not sure, but it's sweet, isn't it? Brenda nodded, a soft smile on her face. She didn't know who did it, but in her heart, a warm feeling spread, like someone out there cared. What she didn't know was that just down the hall, behind a half-open office door, Bruce Rivera had seen everything. He had walked by a few minutes before and paused when he saw Mateo's tiny hands reach for the pencils, his eyes glowing with happiness. Bruce's chest tightened. He remembered being that little boy once, quiet, tired, and often ignored. He remembered how it felt when his mother brought him a small toy from someone's leftovers at the hotel she cleaned. It was nothing big, but it had meant everything. He hadn't planned to stop. He hadn't planned to stay. But when he saw Brenda kneel beside his son, tears in her eyes and love written on her face, he couldn't move. She reminded him of someone, his own mother.
That night, Brenda sat on an old couch beside Mateo as he drew superheroes. This time, the superhero had curly hair and a lion sidekick. Brenda rested her head back and whispered, "Someone's watching over us." Mateo looked up. "Like a superhero?" Brenda smiled. "Maybe." Meanwhile, in his office, Bruce stared at the door for a long time. He didn't say a word, but in his heart, something had changed. A few days later, Brenda was in the supply closet. It smelled like soap and old boxes. She was on the floor, scrubbing with tired arms and sore knees. Mateo lay nearby on a folded towel, pale and warm with a fever. To make him laugh, Brenda made a puppet out of an old rag. "Senor Sock is here to save the day," she said in a silly voice. She made the puppet dance and wiggle, doing funny voices until Mateo giggled through his raspy breath. Outside the door, Bruce froze. He had come to check on supplies, but stopped when he heard that small, wheezy laugh. He peeked through the door crack and saw her tired, sweaty, still in her uniform, but smiling. She had nothing, and yet she gave everything. Bruce stepped away, blinking hard. But it wasn't just exhaustion. It was old memories. His mother, years ago, and a motel closet, making him laugh with sock puppets when he had a fever. 3 days later, a heavy rain poured down over the Rivera building. It was almost 7 p.m. Most of the staff had gone home. Brenda stepped outside, holding Mateo tight in her arms. She had no umbrella, just a thin coat that barely kept him dry. Suddenly, a large umbrella popped open beside her. Bruce stood there, silent, steady, holding it over them. The rain slammed the ground, but under the umbrella it was quiet, like a little safe world. They walked side by side through the parking lot. Mateo peeked out from under her coat. When they reached the edge, Bruce stopped. He handed her the umbrella and said gently, "No one who tries that hard to do the right thing should have to walk in the rain." Then he turned and walked away, without waiting for thanks. Brenda stood there, stunned, her son in one arm, the umbrella in the other. From that day, something shifted. She began to notice Bruce more, how he arrived early, asked about people's families, and always paused near the break room, checking if Mateo was okay. He never asked for attention. In fact, he seemed to avoid it. 1 week later, Mateo quietly walked into the main office. He held a folded piece of paper in his hands. Brenda had told him to stay in the break room, but he had other plans. Bruce looked up, surprised. "This is for you," Mateo said softly, handing him the paper. Bruce opened it. It was a drawing, a tall man with an umbrella standing over a woman and child in the rain. The child had a big smile. Above it, Mateo had written, "Thank you, Mr. Bruce. You're like a quiet superhero." Bruce's throat tightened. Mateo smiled and said, "Mama says people like you save the day without making noise." Bruce reached out and gently ruffled his hair. "I'll keep it safe," he said. And he did. He taped the picture inside his office cabinet. That night, he placed a small labeled inhaler in Brenda's locker. There was a note, "For the breaths that matter most." He also called Yelena and quietly arranged to pay for Brenda and Mateo's lunches for the month. No one ever found out it was him. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He was just passing on the kindness once shown to him by a woman who had nothing but still gave him everything. One quiet Tuesday afternoon, Bruce walked into the break room with a small paper bag. "I thought Mateo might like these," he said. Brenda looked up. "More cookies?" she asked, smiling. "Yeah," Bruce said, grinning. "He likes the ones with chocolate chips and caramel. I got it right this time." Mateo peeked in and lit up. "They're warm." Bruce sat next to him, listening as the boy talked about superheroes and drawings and how he wanted to be a super cleaner like his mom. Brenda smiled, watching them. Then she asked softly, "I've always wondered, why do you care so much about us?" Bruce looked at her, his smile fading a little. He was quiet for a moment. "Because I was Mateo, and my mom, she was a Brenda. Strong, tired, but she never gave up." Brenda's eyes widened, her heart touched. He continued, voice softer now. "She used to sneak me into hotel closets while she cleaned at night. I remember sleeping on towels, listening to her hum lullabies while she scrubbed floors." Brenda didn't speak, but something shifted again. She saw Bruce now, not just as the quiet man helping in the background, but as someone who had lived the same story. A few days later, the company held its annual celebration. Folding chairs were lined up across the warehouse floor. A small stage stood at the front with blue and white balloons. People laughed, ate cake, and chatted in both English and Spanish. Brenda stood in the back, wearing her cleanest uniform. Mateo stood proudly beside her in a shirt a little too big, freshly ironed by Maria's Maria. And then Bruce stepped onto the stage. The room went quiet.
"Thank you all for coming today," Bruce began, his voice calm but strong. "Rivera Solutions was built by people who know what it means to work hard, to struggle, and to keep dreaming anyway." He looked around the room and his eyes stopped on Brenda. "I want to tell you a story," he said. "When I was a kid, my mom worked as a janitor. She cleaned floors late at night, quietly, while I hid in closets because we couldn't afford anyone to watch me. She never complained. No one ever helped her, and no one ever noticed." The room was silent. You could feel the emotion in the air. "A few weeks ago, I saw a young mom doing the same thing," Bruce said, his voice softer now. "She was tired, doing her best to raise her little boy with everything she had. And when I saw her, I remembered my own mother." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I'm proud to work with someone like Brenda Lopez. Her strength, her heart, she's everything this company believes in." For a moment, no one moved. Then applause filled the room, loud, heartfelt, then long. Bruce smiled and added, "That's why it's my honor to promote Brenda to supervising custodian, starting today." Brenda's eyes widened, her hand flew to her chest. But Bruce wasn't done. "And," he turned toward Mateo, "Rivera Solutions will provide a full scholarship for Mateo Lopez, from school all the way through college if he wants, because no child should carry their parents' burdens alone." The room erupted. People stood and clapped, some with tears in their eyes. Brenda held Mateo's hand, her legs shaking. She wasn't crying just because of the promotion or the scholarship. She cried because for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. Bruce walked off the stage and came straight to her. He didn't say a word. He just looked at her with kind eyes. She nodded, still speechless, and he smiled. Because sometimes the strongest words don't need to be spoken, and the biggest victories come from lifting someone else up. Brenda looked down at the name tag on her shirt. It read, Brenda Lopez, Supervisor. The first time she saw it, she almost cried. Now, she wore it proudly. Her morning started earlier now. She greeted the team with a firm voice, her steps more sure. She still worked hard, maybe harder, but something had changed. She felt seen. She felt respected. Mateo's life changed too. His new school had a real library full of superhero books. The teachers knew his name by the second day. They listened to him. They encouraged him. He laughed more, breathed easier. Sometimes, Bruce would sit in the break room with Mateo after meetings. They'd play chess, though Bruce was terrible at it. Mateo giggled every time he made a silly move. Other times, Bruce would accidentally leave a new comic book behind just for Mateo to find. Brenda would watch from the hallway, arms crossed, smiling in spite of herself. She and Bruce never talked much about what was growing between them, but it was there, quiet, real, steady. When they passed in the hallway, their eyes lingered a little longer. When Bruce asked how her day was, he really wanted to know, and when Brenda answered, he truly listened. They weren't rushing towards something new. They were slowly healing from something old. One stormy Thursday evening, thunder rolled outside. Rain slammed against the windows. Brenda stayed late finishing reports and helping a new coworker. When she finally clocked out, the halls were quiet. She walked past Bruce's office and stopped. On the floor, outside his door, was a folded blue raincoat and a warmed food container. A note on top read, "Thank you for not giving up." Brenda stood still. She picked up the note, her hand shaking. The smell of warm rice and grilled chicken drifted up. She turned slowly and saw him. Bruce stood at the end of the hallway, leaning by the door. He didn't move, didn't speak, just nodded once, a soft smile on his lips. Brenda clutched the raincoat to her chest. In that one look, she felt it all. Gratitude, care, something deeper than kindness. This wasn't just a thank you. It was the start of something she hadn't believed in a long time. Later that week, the rooftop was quiet. The sun was low, painting the sky with pink and orange. Brenda stepped onto the terrace. Bruce stood near the edge, hands in his pockets, watching the sky. "You said this was important," she said gently. He turned, his smile easy and familiar. "It is." For a moment they stood there, two people shaped by hard times, now sharing a quiet peace. Bruce pulled a small box from his jacket. No ring, no big speech, just simple, honest. He opened it to show a silver bracelet, thin, elegant, with one word engraved inside. Always. He said, "I'm not proposing. I don't have a plan or a perfect promise, but I do have this. I'll always be here, for you and Mateo, however you need me." Brenda looked down at the bracelet, then up at Bruce. He wasn't a savior. He was something better, real. She didn't answer with words. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, not because she needed saving, but because finally, someone stood beside her. "Thank you," she whispered. Bruce closed his eyes and held her close. Then came a shout, "Mama!" Mateo burst onto the rooftop, cheeks pink from running. He saw them hugging and grinned wide. "You're smiling, Mama. You look like a superhero now." Brenda laughed, a clear, happy laugh. She opened her arm and Mateo ran into it. Bruce knelt beside them, pulling him into the hug. The three of them stood together, the golden sunset wrapping around them like a soft blanket. No wedding, no big announcement, just love, quiet and true. Because sometimes family isn't about blood or vows. Sometimes it's about the people who stay, who see the real you, who choose to stay anyway. And in that moment, with a bracelet that said always, a boy who felt safe, and two hearts finally whole, Brenda knew. She didn't need a perfect ending. She just needed this moment, and it was more than enough. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of love, hope, or quiet kindness, please share it. Let someone else feel seen. And if you want more stories that warm your soul, subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories. Let's walk this journey together, one story at a time. All right, so gather round close. This one's a bit, spooky. It was last summer, just over that ridge. You know, a group just like us. They heard it first, a sort of a scraping sound, slow, real slow from deep in the trees. And then the whispering started. Couldn't make out words, just sibilant like. One of them, he pointed his flashlight out there towards the sound. Nothing. Just blackness. But the whispering, it got louder, almost personal, you know? He swore he saw eyes. Just for a second, reflecting the beam back at him. Low to the ground, too low. They packed up fast, real fast. Didn't even douse the fire properly. Just ran. And the whole time, that scraping, that whispering, it seemed to be following them. So, if you hear anything tonight, maybe, just maybe keep your flashlights off.